All right, everyone. The British government is really doubling down on trying to ruin Tommy Robinson's life. I feel he's up there with Alex Jones on the list of people that I feel bad for, but ultimately I think will be remembered as martyrs. The fact the fact that culture right now is like, oh my god, we must censor the hateful. These people have conspiracy theories in mind. He said something bad about Islam. Oh my god, that's such a terrible, horrible thing. It's not like everyone was criticizing it 10 years ago online freely because we realized organized religion was problematic in the world. No, now it's morphed into a bunch of lynch mobs, of social justice whiners. The low T crowd that can't get a date. And so they try to make others miserable through censorship. And the funny thing is, most of them pretend to be like really far left, and yet they want billionaires to do the censoring. Multinational tech corporations. They're okay. They have cute little logos and rounded corners, and I have a platform there on Twitter or something, so I trust them. That's basically the limits of their mentality. These people pretend to be smart, but really they're the dumbest of the dumb usually. Number one, you have their culture secretary, which I don't know what that means, because the British are kind of weird with their ministries, and so the Ministry of Right Thinking, I suppose, will be made any day now. He's trying to get YouTube to reconsider banning him, because YouTube essentially before, when I think it was the deputy leader of the Labour Party over there's like, oh, he should be banned. I'm going to write Sundar Pichai himself. I'm going to write YouTube. Susan, the CEO there. They didn't ban him. They're like, he hasn't broken any rules. He did nothing wrong under YouTube TS. We are a U.S. firm. It's not like when Jack on Twitter says, well, we conform to the UN. YouTube and Google are more U.S.-centric generally. Not always, but generally speaking, they try to prevent your Euro tyranny from spreading too much on the planet because they'd lose them money. In all honesty, they know, the tech firms here in the U.S. know full well that if they bend over too much for European censorship, alternatives that are not willing to bend will grow larger, their competitors will become viable, and then they lose their monopoly. Ooh, that'd be a terrible time. European censorship will eventually strangle itself with its own noose anyway because of this basic free market model of ideas we have in the U.S., with or without any intervention by the government, which is why I'm optimistic long-term about our chances of breaking free of the encroaching tyranny and anti-First Amendment sort of bullshit we see online. It'll be a long haul. It'll take years, and a lot of people fall by the wayside. Those that maintain will become martyrs and leaders of the next generation. Literally in the political sense. They'll be your next wave of senators and shit like that. But then, the British government is trying to put him back on trial for contempt. Remember when he was last year? They put him on trial and they threw him in the gulag for contempt. For breach of parole or whatever it was, because he was recording outside of a trial venue. And the UK's media is so muzzled, cowardly, and stupid that they're not even willing to report on the fact that there are rape gangs operating in the UK because it's not politically correct. The government, I'm sure, has asked them very impolitely to shut up about the issue because there's an old British tradition of pretending everything's okay even when it's not. And this is very much to their benefit in some cases, like, oh, jolly old England, oh, I've got my tea and my hardtack, so I'm okay even though my feet are rotting off in a trench in World War I. That's, people like to be around the British, a cheerful, stoic, devil may care, just give me my pipe and a pint and I don't care. Okay, that's wonderful. But when things are terribly wrong, when your government is corrupt, when your government is selling you out to a bunch of globalists in Brussels, when your government doesn't care if you get stabbed to death, when your government very visibly doesn't care if your children get abducted, loaded with heroin, and pimped out on the street, that's not the time to be stoic, that's the time to resist, to speak out. The problem is that there's even more resistance among the British than among Americans here to doing so. There's number one, people that just don't care. They're ambivalent or lazy. Number two, people who they're like, well, I work too hard, I can't go protest, I can't do anything, I don't even have time to make a blog. Because they're slaves, basically. They've got a slave mentality. Then you've got people that don't see the problem because literally they're so enraptured by government propaganda they don't even believe there is a problem. And so Robinson has been instrumental in waking a lot of people up out of their slumber about some of the problems going on in the UK. The only thing the British government has done since he started to do that, and it culminates with Panna drama, that's why they're trying to deplatform him, because it was effective. It was a real-world activity. It wasn't Robinson made a YouTube video. That's not what this is about. They're trying to cut off the head of the snake, so to speak, because they're worried that he'll begin mobilizing people in real life and there will be never-ending protests against the British government. They're worried about the stability of the UK, especially at a time when any further provocation in the wake of Brexit potentially happening or being delayed again, enraging people who voted for it, can cause mass protests anyway. All you need is a second layer of chaos over that, and you get what's happening in France right now. Only on steroids. But they're trying to put him back on trial. They already let him go in the first place, and they're like, the charges were bullshit, the trial wasn't proper. They basically an exoneration of him because they're saying, look, there was no reason to put him in jail in the first place. It was a kangaroo court. They didn't even give him time to prepare a proper defense. They gave him some fucking public defense, and they said, well, you said that was okay. Well, that's over here in the United States, generally speaking, you'd get a chance to confer with some sort of legal counsel unless you're a person of no means whatsoever. Generally speaking, that's what would generally happen. I guess in the UK, there's no right to a fair trial, which shows why he was put in prison in the first place. He recorded outside of a trial venue. Oh my God, what a terrible person. And then some people over there in Britain were like, well, he's not supposed to do that because it could bias a potential jury. It could cause problems with the trial proceedings. That's from an American perspective, that's bullshit. From an American perspective, if people get around with cameras and are live streaming outside of a court, there's nothing the government here can do about it. The right to free expression, the First Amendment protects it explicitly. I don't know what kind of weird system you've developed, but it's really like a fucking chimera, to tell the truth. It's weird from an American perspective. It's also weird that you're disarmed, but that's a totally different issue. Some people think that makes them safer, and then I look at your soccer brawls, I know you call it football, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad I'm over here where I can defend myself effectively. No. So they're trying to put him back on trial. Probably will throw him in a cell in the meantime. It's basically an attempt to silence him. The reason why they've been moving against him is not coincidentally related to the release of Panna drama and his exposing of the BBC being a political biased institution. The British government, especially the globalistic side, uses the BBC as a cudgel against its enemies to sow propaganda. It's not unbiased. From over here on the other side of the pond, if you watch the BBC for a couple hours, you'll see the bias quite clearly. Extreme bias in some cases, especially against upstart political movements that seek reform. They're cast off as being fanatics. They're cast off as being terroristic or criminal or something like that, including Robinson. All they can rant about is when back in the old days he founded the EDL. They don't want to admit to their audience that he hasn't yet. They dox it. They constantly use his real name very pointedly to say, well, we know who you are, haha, you're not Robinson, you're Yaxley Lennon. They do that in order to try to intimidate him. People show up at his house, he doesn't get defended by the police, he gets assaulted, he's the one that gets in trouble. It's a fucking witch hunt. It's disgraceful that the UK would call itself a free country and treat one of its citizens with such shame for being afraid that his culture is being destroyed by its corrupt government. So now they're going to try to put him back in prison, and it's because of Panna drama. That was a real big blow for the BBC to be shown to be colluding with a blatantly politically partisan group that even sweet talks Antifa of all groups, which I think the UK's government also considers to be a criminal order. It's not just the US, and in New Jersey it's considered a terrorist group here. Not just a bunch of criminals, which I see them as more just gang members than terrorists per se, but that's just my opinion. I understand the designation and the legal purpose behind it, but it's like, oh, they're not exactly blowing up subway trains. They're just, basically going around doing stupid shit. The proper thing to do is just allow people to defend themselves effectively. Antifa will back off pretty quickly when they realize 90% of the population wants to beat on them legally. It'd be wonderful. A new law. If you're throwing rocks, then anyone can defend themselves against you, whether you're throwing them at them or not. There you go. Problem solved. Everything's live streamed anyway, so you'll have plenty of evidence that that's what happened. If anyone's improperly targeted, you'll know. But basically, Instagram bans him. Facebook bans him. Didn't he get banned off some other site as well in the wake? But then YouTube is saying, no, we can't ban him. He hasn't done anything on our site to warrant a ban. YouTube so far doesn't ban people for off-site behavior, in fact making them one of the few tech firms that doesn't do that. He gets banned from payment processors, he can't make a living, he gets intimidated constantly. Hit pieces are written about him every fucking week by the British and US media. It's amazing that he hasn't been killed yet, to tell the truth. It's amazing that someone hasn't taken that shit seriously. These media orders need to start being held accountable. for their hit pieces. Because in their dehumanization of people that are trying to enact positive change, like a Robinson or anyone else like that, they're going to get people hurt or killed. They should be responsible in a civil case. It shouldn't be Tommy Robinson going back on trial. It should be all the people that assault him or write hit pieces against him. But we all know the UK has free press only for a handful of corporations, and that's it, so that'll unfortunately never happen. That's about all. Peace out.